Morning. Thank you all for coming out today, and thank you, Jackie, for the introduction and the invitation to be here. A little bit about myself before I go into my presentation. As Jackie said, I came from Marlow, Oklahoma. I graduated there in 1992, a long time ago. And I began my pursuit of my BFA here at USAO in 1992 as well. Excuse me. And how I came to be here at USAO is a little bit of a story. When I graduated from high school in 92, we have at Marlow what's called a class day, where all the graduating seniors are recognized for awards that they've received, scholarships that they've gotten, and appointments that they've been given. Well, on that day, I was not recognized for a scholarship for anywhere. And my art teacher knew that I had wanted to come to USAO to study art. So afterward, he asked me, why didn't you get a scholarship? Well, I didn't apply for one. I didn't think that I would qualify. So he insisted that he call up here to USAO and talk to Kent Lamar and find out what needed to happen for me to come and have an interview. Well, a few hours later, I get a call from Mr. Hazel, my art teacher. He says, gather up all your artwork, get up to USAO. You've got a meeting with Kent Lamar and Gail Thorson in the financial aid department at about 3 o'clock. So I gathered it all, ran up this way, and met with Kent Lamar and Gail. And Kent took some time and looked over my artwork, gave me some critiques on it, had some questions about it, and then he, with his little reading glasses on, you know Kent, he has reading glasses, has them on here, and looking over the top of my artwork again, says, let's get this young man a scholarship. And Gail said, well, I don't think we have the money for any more scholarships this year, so I don't know if we can do that. Well, Kent said, well, let's find the money somewhere if we can. They found the money, but one of the things that stuck with me throughout my time here at USAO is what Kent said to me next. And this is, if you know Kent, you know this. And he sticks his boot out, shakes it at me, looking over his glasses and goes, you see this boot? I said, yes, sir. He says, if you don't finish, I'm going to put this boot up your butt. Fair enough. So during that time, I kept that in my mind, not because I was afraid of him actually doing that, but I respected him enough that he gave me this opportunity, and I was going to make the most of it. So after graduation in 1997, I went out into the world, like all of you are going to do, wondering, what in the world am I going to do? I searched and searched for different jobs, and I took jobs all the way from selling t-shirts to on like vendor stands to doing shoe sales, and then I got my first job doing graphic design 2.5 years after I graduated. And it was in a sign shop where I produced signage. It's pretty cool. But wasn't the ideal job, but as Chris said, it gave me a springboard and connections to other people in other places. Along about last year, Jackie had messaged me on Facebook and said, would you consider coming out to do part of our lecture series and be one speaker? So, sure, not the greatest of orators. I don't do public speaking very often. I read scripture at church on Sunday morning sometimes, that's about it. But I agreed to do it, and she gave me the guidelines as to what to go by, which was share with you all my experiences that I had at USAO with some of the things that I learned here and how I use them today. She also asked that I take some of the experiences that I had after USAO and share those with you, so that if there are things that you run into after graduation, it might be something that could help you along the way. And also to share with you what I'm doing today. While at USAO, there were so many different things that I did here that I didn't even think about until I sat down and started compiling a list of all the things that I use daily that I learned here, all the way from the IDS programs through the art program. And I realized that I've got 20 minutes to talk, and I'm not going to put all this stuff into a 20-minute speech. So I narrowed it down to 3 things that I use daily in my business. And believe it or not, the one thing that I use the most is the idea of the syllabus. That paper that you guys get in each one of your trimesters, it tells you what's going to be expected, what your deadlines are, whenever you have to have your portfolios in. All those things helped me to come up with what I call AllStar's workflow diagram. And if you'll forgive me, I forgot my pointer, so I'll just point this way. I have a chart in Excel, it's a simple chart, and this is my brain, my digital brain, because at any one point in time throughout my business, I'm working on anywhere from 5 to maybe 30 plus jobs. And to keep all that information of everybody's work in my head is impossible. So what I do is when a customer calls me, one of the first things that I do is I pull up a notepad, just a simple notepad, and I talk to them on the phone or text message or whatnot, and they tell me what they're looking for, what kind of shirt they need, what design needs to look like, and I take the notes along the way. This particular job was for French's Road Service, and when I'm speaking with them, I find out shirt color, where it's going to go, front placement on the shirt, left chest, back placement, when they need it by. These are all the things like on your syllabus that you find out when your portfolio is due dates, and what ink colors are going to need to be used, and all the little extra details of their job. So once I get all this information from my customer, I put in all my jobs I need to design. So those are all the jobs that need to be designed. And once it is designed and handed over to the customer for approval, it moves up to my next category, which is the ready to be quoted and design job. So I'm waiting on the customer at this point to get back to me and say, the design has been approved, you need to make these shirts for me in this size, this quantity. And if they have a purchase order like a school uses, then I have to wait on that as well. But once they get all the information to me, then it moves up to my jobs approved and ready to go to print. And from the jobs approved and ready to go to print category, now I'm responsible for ordering the shirts and then producing the film, producing the screens, similar to what you guys do in print class with serography. You have to shoot the screen in a dark room, using a film positive, or however else that you guys are doing that. So once I get all that stuff done, it's ready to go to the press, and then it's time for me to produce the shirts. A lot of times when my customers come to me, they will not have camera-ready artwork. They will not have artwork that I can go straight from their files and use. I have to do some work on it. 95% of the time, I have to do the work on it. This particular customer, his idea was he had a business card. He liked what was on the business card, and he wanted me to put that on his shirt, but he didn't want it to be as blocky as it was, and he wanted it to be more dynamic. So this is what he gave me to go from. That was his business card. And if you see, the problem with this is information overload. His road service logo at the top, or his name of his company, was about the same size as his phone number and his 24-hour trucking service. So from this, I was able to take all that information and use some design qualities and stuff, techniques that we learned here at USAO, and use some size and scale to give the title of his company the most attention. Then his phone number is going to be second, and then his little icons with all the other stuff is going to be after that. From this, I was able to come up with his t-shirt design back, which to me is a lot easier to look at than his business card, because you see the name of the company, then you see the road service, and so on and so forth. So this, excuse me, was an example of a design where the way the customer sends you just a business card or a rough sketch. Sometimes they send you stick figures, and you have to go from that. This, just in case you don't recognize it, is my second point of what I took with me from USAO. Those of you who have been through the oil painting class probably recognize this. I guess you guys are still doing this?
Design, we do it in design. Yeah.
Okay, where you paint little squares that drive you nuts. Well, this actually is very helpful. I use this daily. Because in the t-shirt business, I'll have somebody call me and they'll say, yeah, I want my shirt printed in a purpley grayish color. Well, you know how many purpley grayish colors there are? So, if they can provide me with a sample of this color, then I can take a look at it and say, oh, if I put warm red with a cool blue and maybe add a little bit of white into it, I'm going to get this purpley grayish color that they want. Or if they can provide me with what's called a PMS number, which is Pantone Matching System, then I can look at my Pantone chart and figure out exactly what color they're talking about. But I credit these charts with me being able to look at a color that somebody brings me, like a gum wrapper or whatever, and say, I like that color. I can look at it and say, ah, that's what colors are in this that make it up. And that's all because of these annoying charts that we had to print and do forever. So that is my second point, is using what I used here at USAO is the color charts, and I use them daily because it is cheaper to mix a little bit of ink for 10 to 15 shirts than it is to call Graphic Solutions Group and say, can you mix me Pantone 201? And it costs $150 to get a gallon that I may or may not use. So very helpful, pay attention to your charts. The third thing that I use daily is illustration and perspective and figure drawing, okay? This came to me just a couple weeks ago from a customer who had hired another company to do their design. She has a boot camp to brunch, which is a CrossFit, and they do a camp where they start them out with a healthy breakfast, then they work them out, and then they give them a lunch. Well, she wanted a girl doing push-ups, but the only girl they had was a girl doing push-ups on a medicine ball, and the other company, she asked them to please remove the ball, and they couldn't get it right. They had her arm growing out of her nose. So they contacted me and said, would you mind trying to take a whack at this and see if you can figure out how to make it look like her arm's not growing out of her nose, because they can't figure it out. And also the text needs some help. So from this, using perspective and using figure drawing, I was able to figure out the biomechanics of the human body. The arm is going to be here, you got your foreshortening going back. I was able to figure out where her hand's going to be and where her arm would actually lie if she was going to be doing push-ups with her arm down on the ground. So since I figured out that one small problem, now I had to move on to the text, making it more dynamic. So once I messed with the text a little bit and played with the idea that it was going to be a workout and food, I came up with the boot camp to brunch with the fork in the middle of it there. So that kind of gives the whole story of you're doing a workout and you're getting to eat and whatnot. Another example of illustration and how important that it is. The Independence Elementary School in Yukon contacted me and asked, could you take our Millerman and take the logo for the Transformers and turn it into the Transformer looking logo? Unfortunately, I could not do that. But there was a young man in our church congregation who sets and draws every Sunday, superheroes and whatnot. I said, hey, I'll give you $20 if you can figure this out for me. By the end of the service, he gave me that. Unfortunately, he's going to be going to Oklahoma Christian this next year instead of USAO. I've tried to talk him into it, but he's won that. Anyway, this is a good example of how to take two ideas, put them together to come up with one, and this was the ending result of that conglomeration. All right. Now then, things that I learned after leaving USAO. The job search and the interview. Networking, LinkedIn, social media, websites, and classifieds are going to be your friend. And what I mean by networking is, like Chris was talking about earlier, surrounding yourself with people that are in the field and getting to know people and connecting with that person that connects with that person and so on down the road. That is the way things really work today. So if you'll network really well and use social media and websites, you'll be able to find out where you fit in the scheme of things and get started. And don't think you're going to walk out the door right into the best job ever. You might, but it might take some time to get there. But don't be discouraged. The first thing is to scout your target, know your audience. And what I mean by that is if you're applying for a job, don't just apply to the job because they have a job listed. Go to their website, learn all that you can about this company. See what they're about, see what they do, what do they create, where do you fit in, what does their dress code look like there, just so that you go to the interview and you're not overdressed or underdressed. That's a very important thing. Also, find out if there's anyone that you know that works at this company. Do they like working there? If they say, avoid this place at all costs, this is not worth your time and effort and your heartache, then maybe don't apply for that job. But if you have somebody that says, this place is great, you would love working here, then by all means, go ahead and apply for that job. But that's what I mean by scout your target and know your audience. Second is to tailor your resume to the job that you're applying for. What I mean by that is to look what their requirements are on their job description. And if they have, that their first thing is they want you to know Adobe Photoshop, InDesign. Don't have those listed as your very last thing. Have those at the first, right in front of them when they look at what you can do. Show them that you can do those things. And not only that, one point that I'll give you on your resume is, by all means, don't lie on your resume. If you've never used Photoshop, which hopefully you have, or a program they're asking for, don't say that you know how to do it. It could get you in a lot more problems than you want. A little story behind that is, the company I work for downtown, Legal Graphics, we had a guy to apply for a job, and he claimed he could design websites. And about 2 weeks into it, we realized that he could not design websites. And how they found that out was, we had our email set up to where our bosses could see all of our emails going in and out. Well, he was emailing a buddy of his all the designs and stuff, and he was sending them back to him, and he was sharing his paycheck with him. And so that kind of infuriated our bosses, and they let him go real quick. So don't do that. If you have a working knowledge of a program, fine, list that you have a working knowledge of that. But don't lie and say that you know how to do it and think that you're going to learn it once you get there, because you're probably going to have problems with that. Prepare answers to commonly asked questions. Inevitably, whenever you are going through an interview, they're going to ask you some common questions, which are, what's your strength? What's your weakness? And what you're going to want to prepare is an answer that is not the same as everyone else would give, which is something maybe like, I'm too caring. Well, okay, great. But you want one that's really going to stand out, an answer that's going to stand out in their mind, they're going to remember you. So have those rehearsed and have those prepared before you go into this interview, because you're probably going to be asked those questions. Fourth, prepare questions for the employer. Because at the end of most interviews that I've been in, they've said, do you have any questions for us? And if you sit there and look at them like a deer in headlights and go, no, then they may be like, okay, well, he's not a self-starter, or he has no ambition, or doesn't want to really know what's going on here. Be interested in what they're doing there. Because if you're interested in them, they're likely to be interested in you. And fifth, take notes after the interview, after it has concluded. Don't pop out your cell phone in the middle of the interview, that's kind of rude. Don't pop out a notepad in the middle of the interview. But take mental notes while you're there of things that they've told you, and maybe some critiques that they've given you on your portfolio, or suggestions that they've made. Note those down so that you can fix those later on down the road. And if you encounter that again later, you'll be more prepared. And last thing I'd like to share with you guys, these are some of my graphics that are just going to roll through t-shirts that I've done and other stuff, is make sure that you keep your art as part of you. When you go out in the world and you get a job, whether it be in the graphics field, the art field of some sort, or if you're flipping burgers at McDonald's, make sure that you keep your art as being part of who you are, because that's what makes you happy. If you think about it, when you're at your most happy time is when you're creating your artwork. When you're the least stressed is when you're creating your artwork. That's what makes you, you. And I found this out the hard way after I had twins, or my wife had twins, sorry. And I got so involved with trying to get work out the door. I was constantly working 20 hours a day sometimes, and that's all I did. I didn't have time for my artwork anymore. I didn't have time for anything that I love to do, and I've become very cranky, very not easy to live with, and my blood pressure skyrocketed, and I was depressed. So when I went to my doctor and I was talking to him about it, he said, well, you got to find your center. I was like, okay, and he kept saying, well, you got to find your center. So I thought, well, he must think that I'm some sort of Tootsie Pop. He's going to see how many licks it takes to get to the middle of the B. But in actuality, what he was saying was, what makes you happy? Where's your happy place? And my happy place was my artwork that I had left behind. I didn't do it as often as I wanted to anymore because I was busy designing t-shirts. And that's not what I set out to do, was to be a t-shirt designer. But unfortunately, or fortunately, that's what I do now. And I love it, and it gives me time with my family, and it gives me time to do my own artwork and to be creative sometimes the way that I want to be. When my customers just give me a free run of, this is what I'm thinking, just see what you can do with it. And that's the kind of jobs I like to do when they say, just see what you can do with it. So, anyway, hopefully some of the stuff that I have talked to you about today has been helpful. And hopefully that whenever you guys graduate, you will graduate here, that you go out and you're very successful. And you take your degree and use it to the best of your abilities. And come back one of these days and share with the other students what trials and tribulations that you've had, and what successes and what things that have taken you to where you've gotten to. So, anyway, thank you very much. I'll let the rest of the slideshow play out here. It's not a whole lot, but these are just a few graphics that I've worked on throughout the years. These are air show posters that I've done for a place in Houston. And these are some pencil drawings. This is my center, my artwork that I love to do is pencil drawing. That is my media of choice. Thank you very much for listening, and hopefully